If you're watching online, welcome to Anchor. So excited you chose to join us online. If you couldn't be here with us in person, we look forward to seeing you soon. But we've been talking for the last several weeks about momentum, and I came across this story online, and I just had to share it today. On a cold January night, you guys ready? Cold January nights are on their way. Just wait. They're coming, which means I'm going to start sleeping a lot better. On a cold January night about 15 years ago, I was driving from a friend's house to pick up my wife from work. She was working a closing shift on a game night at a major downtown parking lot. Anybody here ever worked a closing shift at a parking lot around like a stadium? You talk about chaos. Yeah. Game nights were always bad for her. Think about this. Hundreds of cranky, usually highly intoxicated drivers trying to leave a parking lot all at the same time. Trying to get on the interstate all at the same time. It is mass chaos. And they want to try to tell you it's organized, but it's not. They were blaming her because they had to wait in line and they couldn't just get right out of the parking lot, jump the curbs. It's not like going to a Chiefs game and you just kind of jump curbs and hills wherever you go. There's only one way in, one way out. And you see, this night was not going to be any different. Except for the fact I was running late. It was cold. And she would have been waiting outside and we still had a 45-minute drive to get home. Now, husbands, I think we can relate to this guy, right? Imagine, most females don't enjoy being late. They push it until the last minute, but if they're late, it's always somebody else's fault. Oh, wait, maybe that's just my life. I don't know. But can you imagine leaving your spouse out in the cold with it snowing and raining and windy? Do you know how awkward that car ride home would be? It would be like, honey, I'm calling you an Uber. Oh, yeah, sure. So obviously his night was not off to a good start. As I approached a red light, I noticed an elderly homeless man standing by the traffic island. As I stopped, he walked up to me. I knew that I had absolutely no cash in my pocket. I had nothing that I could offer him in my mind, but I politely rolled down the window anyway, which immediately brought me back to exactly how cold it was outside. He was shivering, definitely not dressed for the weather, but he showed me a bouquet of flowers. Anything you spare, he said, would be okay. In my mind, I had no idea where he got that bouquet, but I noticed he had had it out long enough for the flowers to have a thin coat of frost all over their petals. I didn't have the heart to tell him I didn't have any money, even though it would have actually been true. I felt that it wouldn't come across that way, so while pretending to fumble through my pockets, I asked him why he wasn't at the shelter. He said he didn't make it on time and they'd already closed for the night. The light changed green. Can you imagine the relief on my face? I can't imagine what I would have done if I were in his shoes. Standing in the middle of an empty intersection at midnight on a freezing January night, selling flowers to random motorists. Not exactly my idea of entertainment. I explained that I had no money and drove off. The guy clearly had no options, but I did. I could have found an ATM and got the man enough money for a place to crash that night. In fact, truthfully, the idea crossed my mind. But in spite of me feeling absolutely awful, ashamed to be sitting in a vehicle with heat, knowing I would be sleeping in a warm bed, I chose to do nothing. I tried to rationalize by telling myself my wife had a bad night, and if I was any more late to pick her up, it would make my night worse, and I'd be sleeping on the couch. I told myself those were his problems, not mine. But truthfully, every time I told myself something else, I didn't start feeling any better. And by the time I picked my wife up, I was disgusted with myself. I told her what had happened, turned the vehicle around, and had to go find that man. She wasn't too thrilled about her evening as it had already unfolded. And now can you imagine how frustrated she was to spend an extra 10 minutes driving in the wrong direction? And when I mentioned an ATM, I was told that under no circumstances I was going to stop for cash for some drunken homeless guy who won't go get a job. I ignored her and just kept driving. Sidebar, guys, that's not usually the best case scenario for you. When we got to the intersection, guess who was still standing there? He was standing alone, flowers in hand, shivering so hard we could clearly see it from far away. I walked out of the car and took my coat from the rear seat and put it over his back and apologized. Said, "I'm sorry, I really have no money to give you, but the least I could do was give you my coat, so at least you're not as cold now." I'll never forget the look on his face. It was too long ago for me to remember, but he said something like this: "No matter how cruel my life can be, there will always be good people out there." He handed me the frosty flowers that he tried to sell me, but I wouldn't accept them. Then he walked over to the passenger side of the car and handed them to my wife and simply said, "You have a very kind husband." As we drove away, we could see how much frost was over those flowers, and both of us choked up. And I convey that story to you today as we are talking on momentum and serving and loving people. Is every day we're faced with opportunities just like this man was. Every day we're faced with a choice. We get to serve, we get to love, or we get to determine not to. Because as followers of Jesus, God is going to give us opportunities to serve. He's going to give us opportunities to make a difference in people's life. But which part of the story are we? Where do we find ourselves? You see, I can tell you for sure, absolute fact, there are people out there that want you to make a difference in their life for all of the wrong reasons. But one of the things we have is we've watched TV and we hear about all the people who are trying to steal from you that we never take into account that we're listening to a news report and therefore we don't serve because the news reporter said there's people out there, or my friend said, there's somebody, they're all out to steal from you, and they're not, if you give them a financial gift, they're going to use it for all the wrong reasons. But we forget that inside of us, we have the Holy Spirit who will guide us to do what's necessary. But the reality, if we were really truthful and honest, we don't seek out the opportunities. We kind of turn our head and our eyes away from the opportunities because it's going to require us to sacrifice something that somebody else is going to benefit, which means it's going to cost me something. You know what? How many of you have ever had an opportunity to buy a meal for somebody? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. How many of you had the opportunity to put a coat on the back of somebody who's cold and couldn't afford a coat? Most of us, we look at life and we're like, wow, I don't really believe those people exist. I really don't believe, we stop recognizing the needs around us, which is what's causing people to get away from Jesus. Because we are too busy and too focused on ourselves that it's like, it's irrelevant. I don't need that, because we let all these things run through our mind. The easiest thing to do is to roll the window up and keep driving. I remember being in the Dominican Republic several years ago, and they have people literally lining the streets to sell you stuff. If you don't believe me, ask Dalton. They would bang on your car doors. But that is the only way they can provide for their family. I remember being a teenager sitting at Skid Row in LA and giving coats to people in October, getting prepared for the winter. And the looks on the faces, if you've ever been able to provide a real need for someone, something that's not just like, hey, you know what, I think I want this, and I've decided, it's not like Christmas. This is life or death for them. But are we caught in the trap that we start assuming the worst about everybody? That we don't even give God the opportunity to use us to be a blessing because of our assumptions. But what's wrong with assumptions? Except for the fact that you assume the worst about everybody, but want everybody else to assume the best about you. We get mad when people start judging us, but yet we live our life doing the exact same thing. But maybe it's because we believe hurting people really deserve their hurt because they caused it. Have you ever fallen into that trap? You hear one bad story and assume the entire homeless population is homeless because of their decisions. You look at alcoholics and you can help them, and maybe you've been there and you can help walk them through the journey out of that. But it's like, well, it's not really my problem because I got myself. Do you hear the arrogance that we as Christians can sound like? Aren't we supposed to be hope? Aren't we supposed to be the help? You have the resources in your life to make a difference in someone's life today. You have the abilities. Simple acts of kindness. Simple acts of kindness will make a significant impact on the lives of those around us. I remember walking visited Chicago for the first time. Anybody ever been to Chicago? Yeah? Only a few of you? Like one of my favorite places to go. Like if you haven't gone, you need to. That is the one like really large city that Brooke and I have been like, if we were going to move and live in a like millions and millions of people kind of metropolitan area, Chicago's where we go. We've been to LA, been to New York, don't want to live in either one of those places, but like for some reason, like the idea of like 100 inches of snow every year sounds fun. I don't know, maybe. But we went on a little family long weekend trip for my dad's birthday. And I'm kind of a pizza connoisseur. Like one of the things since Brooke and I have been on our diet, we have not been able to eat pizza near as much as we used to, which is probably a good thing. But I love Giordano's Pizza. If you've ever been to Chicago and you ever want like real authentic Chicago stuff, you've got to go there. I've been to several. It's the best. It's like that's a cheap meal you need to take. Let me just put it to you that way. But it was the first time we went there, and we had no idea how much pizza you get when you order. So Brooke and I ordered a large pizza. My mom and dad ordered a large pizza. My brother and his wife ordered a large pizza. And my sister and her husband ordered a large pizza. So we thought, okay, there's like 17 of us. So we're like 4 larges. You know what? That's probably not going to be enough. So we actually ordered a couple extra. So now we have 6 large pizzas. Okay, let me get you, like the crust is that, like the pizza's that thick, right? So I'm just like, we're thinking it's Pizza Hut. Like cracker crust. Which don't get me wrong, that's good too. But we had so much pizza left over that we're like, we don't know what to do with it all. We were leaving the next morning, and it's kind of like, what are we going to do with all this? We had like the equivalent of 3 large pizzas left. And Easton and Aiden can put down some pizza. And even they were like 1 or 2 pieces, and it's like, okay, I'm done. Because it's just that thick. And we're sitting here walking the streets of downtown Chicago, and I'll be honest with you, we're like, have these pizza, and we're kind of like, and I'm the one who ends up carrying most of it because, of course, kids aren't going to do it. And I'm like, okay, and I see a few families, sitting on some street corners. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to carry this all the way back to our hotel. It was a train ride, like 45 minutes to get to the hotel because that's the only one we could find we could afford. And so I started asking, hey, do you guys want some pizza? And I remember, like, Aiden and Easton were with me, and they had a pizza, and we were all like, hey, do you guys want some? And it's not like, hey, look, we have an overabundance of things, and it's just like, hey, you know what? Here, it was no arrogance. It was like, hey, we have this. If you want it, it's yours. Like, it was completely pure. I mean, you hear the motive difference? Because you can be very arrogant, like, well, look what I have. Therefore, you can have some out of my abundance. You can have a little bit. It was, hey, we just want to be a blessing. You'd be amazed how many times we heard no. Like, it took us probably 30 minutes to give the pizza away. But then we came across the street corner with a mom and 2 kids. And I'll never forget their face. We were a block away from Nike Town in Chicago. And she looked me in the eye, and you know, like if you've been around people or do anything with people, you know when you're being lied to, and you know when somebody's being real. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, like especially if you're a parent, you know when your kids are lying. I've been in the people business since I got out of college. I know when I'm being lied to. And this lady looked at me in the eye, and either she was the greatest liar in the history of the world, and she's like, this is the only food my kids have eaten in 3 days. And here it is all because we were really over like ordering food. And you would be amazed at the difference. You should have seen the look on those kids' face for something as simple as pizza. Sitting in the Dominican Republic working in a boys' orphanage. Dalton was there with us. He'll tell you the story. Some of these kids were 18, 19 years old and never tasted pizza before in their life. You would have thought we were the kings of the world by bringing them pizza to eat. Like, you'd be amazed. There was a kid that there was no way he was more than like 4 feet, like 3 feet 5 at the most. And he downed 6 slices of pizza that were that long. Because it's those little things, those simple things that make a difference in people's lives. But we get so caught up in us that we don't even see the opportunities in front of us. You see, Jesus lived his life trying to turn his love for the world into action. Let's look to the book of Luke, chapter 7, verses 11 through 17. To see a simple act of kindness that made a colossal impact on someone's life. Luke 7, verses 11 through 17. Soon afterward, Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went along with him. As he approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out. Now I want to set this scene for you. Okay? Jesus had just performed a miracle, healing a centurion's servant, and these people were gathered around him, and they were marching with him into the city because they were anxious about what was going to happen next. Okay? So you understand, there is a crowd of people excited. There's a crowd of people who are anxious. There's a crowd of people who are just like sitting on the edge of their seats, wondering what Jesus was going to do next. And what do they come across? A crowd of people where someone's son was being carried out. A dead person was being carried out of the city, the only son of this mother, as she was a widow. And a large crowd from the town was with her. When the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her and said, "Don't cry." Now, I want to pause right there. If you're in a group of excited people, all right, let's kind of put this into our context. If you're on Mass Street getting ready to go to a concert, if you go downtown where, there's a concert coming, they will line up for blocks to get to be like the first people in, right? And you have crowds of excitement and they're walking down the street and all of a sudden there's a crowd of people mourning walk to you. Have you ever experienced excitement and discouragement collide? Who usually wins in those circumstances? It's usually the excited people who come down, right? It's not very rarely do you pull discourage people out of discouragement. It's usually the excitement comes down. So could you imagine somebody who's mourning the loss of her son while also you truthfully probably remembering the loss of her husband? So now not only am I a widow, but now I have no son either. And for them, there to be a guy named Jesus looking at her going, "Don't cry." Your first thought, let's just be real, okay? Your first thought would be like, how dare you say that to me? Don't cry? Do you realize what I'm walking through? Anybody know what I'm talking about? But you get it? Your first thought would be like, how insensitive are you? But then Jesus shows up. He went and touched the burr. A burr being a movable frame on which the coffin or corpse is being placed before burial so that they can carry the coffin to the grave. They were carrying him, and the bearers stood still because Jesus was there. He said, "Young man, I say to you, get up. I say to you, get up." The dead man sat up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. They were all filled with awe and praised God. "A great prophet has appeared among us," they said. God has come to help his people. This news about Jesus spread throughout Judea and the surrounding country. See, the crowd following Jesus was anticipating a miracle, but there's no way they could have anticipated something to this magnitude. And you're the mourners. And in that culture, in that day and age, they would actually pay people to walk and mourn with the family. So, not only so this, you want to feel lonely? If you have to pay people to mourn with you, that's a very lonely place to be, right? If you have to pay people, if you're in the hospital and you have to pay people to show up just to show love to you, I'd feel pretty lonely, wouldn't it? And so to have this guy show up named Jesus and say, "Stop crying," and then walk up to your dead son and say, "Get up," and then to see your dead son, you want to talk about a wave of emotion, something that's going to take you through every paradigm of emotion. You're like, how dare, you're like anger to disappointment to excitement to confusion. Right? You'd be like, if you've ever lost someone that's really close to you, close as a son, realizing you've already lost your husband, to see Jesus tell you to stop crying, and then for him to come and say, "Get up," and it actually happened. I want to talk about love. This lady was in a desperate situation, and she came face to face with excitement, and she found Jesus. What would our feeling be? Would we be angry at that crowd? Would we be angry at Jesus? Because when we're hurt, if we're honest, we want people to hurt for us. We want people to hurt with us. And maybe there are times we want people just to hurt because we hurt. And if you've ever crossed paths with somebody who's in a time, in a season of desperation, of absolute desperation, you've got to understand that those are some feelings that are real to them. They're just looking for somebody to give them hope. They're looking for somebody that will help them catch the eyes of Jesus. Because Jesus was able to look through all the mourners and find her. Jesus was able to pass all of that and find her. Jesus knew he had an opportunity to make a difference in her life, and he did it, because serving others is not an option for followers of Christ. It is our mandate to be love and serve those who are hurting. It is your mandate. It is not something that is optional. If you walk the streets and if you drive and you see hurting people and you are judgmental, you are the one that is wrong, not them. You are, every day of your life, you're going to be faced with opportunities to make a difference. What are you going to say up here? Because it's indicative of what you feel right here. If you look at hurting people and you go, well, you know what? Not my problem. They did this to themselves. Then are you really following after the heart Christ wants you to have? It is our mandate to love, to be a love, and to serve. We have to stop seeking out recognition for doing the right thing. When we finally do something, it's like, ooh, I better post this to Instagram. I better put this on Facebook so I get credit for it. The most effective times in my life that I've been able to love and serve people are ones that my wife doesn't even know about. I found in my job a whole new group of people that I have no idea. And you'd be amazed how just asking a simple question, hey, how are things going in your life? I ask most of the guys who work on our crew, I ask that almost every day, how are things going? How? Because most people, they don't come across other people who actually care what's going on in their life. But the reality is, if you have the right motives and you have the right perspective and the right heart of humility and the heart of grace, you really do care. You're not just trying to be in the know, you really do care. But we can't be seeking out recognition. As a follower of Jesus, we should always be seeking out opportunity. Opportunities to serve will follow those who have a desire to serve. If you really want to love people, if you really want to serve people, opportunities are going to find you. But when you get your heart in the wrong place, then when opportunities come, you're going to be so blinded by yourself that you don't even see them. Why don't we serve? Why don't we love? What are some of the excuses we give? We don't have time. We don't have the money. We don't even know anybody that needs help. I don't even have the skills to help anybody. People deserve their pain because they caused the issues in their life, so it's a waste of my time to serve them. Or maybe you're like me. One of the biggest struggles I have to face is I can't meet all of their needs, so it's hard to even meet one. It's like if I can't solve, I'm a problem solver. That's what I enjoy doing. And so I've been known in my life to create problems just so I could solve them, and because then it kind of brings value. But if I see a problem in somebody's life and I can't help them fix the entire picture, I'm like, why do I even start helping them paint the right picture? You see, the truth is, I can't do it all, but I can do something. You cannot do it all, but you can do something. Why is it that it's such a struggle? Why do we look at people and go, I don't really know that it's necessary. I don't really know that I have the skills. I don't really know that I have the calling. But yet we see hurting people everywhere. If you go to the book of Acts and you find out what the word Christian means, it was not a term that Jesus gave us. It was a term that people gave us because of people acting Christ-like by showing love and serving others. Jesus told the disciples at the very end of his existence was, this is how people will know you're my disciple. By what? By you serving. Our motive to give has to be all about the receiver and not about us. If you're giving with the intent to receive, if you're serving with the intent to get something from that, then you've not only missed your mandate, but your heart needs to be reconciled. Your heart needs restoration. We need to posture our heart and make the commitment to be audaciously generous. Because that's where it starts, honestly. It's a financial thing, first and foremost. Because that is the one area of our life we feel like nobody else can tell me what to do. I can do whatever I want with my money. I can do what I want with my time. I don't want to give up my coat because, I don't know when JCPenney is going to have the next sale for me to buy a new coat. I don't want to give up. I got to drive a four-wheel drive because those couple snow days, I got to have that. And I'm not here critiquing that. But if you drive and have a luxury style of life and you're, as a follower of Jesus, and you're not willing to serve and love others, then you need to get this. Because your heart is in the wrong place. And I hope you can hear, this is a very hard message for me to speak. I told Luke before we go, you got to keep me because this is hard for me. Because I want my kids to have nice things. I want my kids to have a great life. But I also cannot give my kids a great life and forget that my calling as a follower of Jesus is greater than my calling to give my kids a nice life. Because the best thing I can give for my kids is teaching them to love and serve humanity, because that's what Jesus did, and it starts with being audaciously generous. But we have to get this, and I hope you understand. This is where I believe most Christians get it wrong, is we give and we give and we give and we give and we of our time, but we never encourage people to have the heart of an overcomer. Getting past the issues that we're helping them walk through. Getting them past the struggles that currently they face. It's saying, we can do better together. We can move forward together. That it's the things that you struggle with, the issues that, whatever it is, you can get through this with a little bit of hard work. Because I don't believe Jesus' intent was ever for people to just be on the receiving end. His intent was for people who are in seasons of struggle to receive so that they can pay that forward later. But it becomes easy because we're afraid of the tough conversation of going, we can do better than this. We can do better. But it starts with us having to grow our capacity to love and serve our community. Because when you serve people, you communicate how important they are to God and how important they are to you. Is it beneath you? Do you feel like it's not your part? But we can never stop growing in our capacity to love and serve our community. Because we passionately need to seek after opportunities to go wherever we are needed and do whatever it takes to serve people. Are you willing to go wherever? Willing to do whatever? So much so that Jesus, if you came across a crowd of mourners, you were ready to encourage. If you're driving on a cold winter night in January and you feel the leading of God to make a difference in someone's life, you're going to actually stop. Kindness is contagious. Be contagious. Simple acts of kindness can spread like wildfire. What are some examples of simple acts of kindness? These are easy. Have you ever sent an encouraging text to someone? Send an encouraging text and see what kind of a response you get back. Provide a meal. Mow someone's grass. Compliment somebody to their face. Be a great tipper. A lot of silence on that one. Walk around your neighborhood and just pick up trash. Simple. One of the ones I love, and I'm teaching my kids, is open the door for people. That's such a lost art in our culture today. It's actually sad because it's so simple. You'd be amazed at the looks you get when you hold doors for people. They'd be like, oh my goodness, I didn't know people did this anymore. But yet it makes such a difference because it's like you're stepping outside of yourself and caring for them. Hold the door open when somebody's walking behind you. Like even if you have to wait 10 seconds, what's so important about getting to the hostess stand at the restaurant 10 seconds quicker that you can't make a difference? Like just by showing somebody, hey, I care. Be positive, speak life. Leave a positive review online for a business that gives you a great experience. We're great at leaving negative ones and we're horrible at leaving the positive ones. We're like, let me trash the businesses I can't stand who treat me like garbage, but when I actually get a good experience, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. We don't do a good job celebrating things. We don't do a good job celebrating people. Handwrite an encouraging card and actually mail it to somebody. You know how long it's been since people have received a handwritten card from someone? Some people, it's been years. Like, the pen and the paper, actually, like, not texting or handwriting, like, actually taking the time to write something out that isn't digitized. Maybe the best thing you could do to serve someone is invite them to church. When's the last time you've invited someone to come to church with you? Some of us, it could have been years, maybe ever. We have to make this commitment that I will make a difference in someone's life through simple acts of kindness. No more excuses. No more it's going to push it off to somebody else, but I'm going to do it. As the band comes back, I want you to reflect on these questions. What keeps me from noticing the needs of the community around me? What is keeping me from noticing the needs of the community around me? What excuses do I give for not serving those who are hurting and need hope? Excuses do I give for not serving those who are hurting and need hope? What opportunities am I overlooking right now to serve those around me? Because I promise you, the opportunities are there. The question is, are you have the right heart? Do you have the right perspective? Is your eyes open to what people around you need? Would you stand with me today? Today, God, we're going to take a moment and step outside of ourselves. We're going to take the opportunity, God, to focus on others because that's what you did. In a crowd full of hurting people, you were able to catch the eyes of the one. Jesus, I know in my life I feel like I've been in a crowd of hurting people and I always feel like my hurt is worse, but you always seem to catch my eyes. And Jesus, you show up on the scene just for me. God, I've got to replicate that. God, I've got to imitate your heart because there are people who are hurting. There are people who need hope. And it is my perspective, it is my judgmental attitude, it is my belief system that is keeping me. It is my fear of giving up control that is keeping me from sharing hope and love with people everywhere. God, help us have the right heart. Help us have the right motive. Help us have the right perspective so that we can fulfill the mandate you have called us, which is to serve and love people. God, it's not our job to be able to tell them what they should do or what they need to do. It's our job just to encourage and to love, get them involved in a community where they can grow and be an overcomer. But God, we have the opportunity to make a difference, and today we stand and say we will. Today we stand and say, on my watch, I'm going to be hope. On my watch, I'm going to love. On my watch, I'm going to serve. Every day of my life, seeking out opportunities to make a difference in someone's life. In Jesus' name we pray.